Tonight, I'm taking you back to a quiet workshop in Milwaukee in 1868. In the flickering candlelight, every metallic click rising from Christopher Latham Sholes' workbench was unknowingly playing the first melodies that would forever change humanity's writing habits. But in that moment, Sholes had no idea. He was simply focused on his work. Who could have known that this small invention would one day guide the fingers of billions of people, speeding up and slowing down their lives? In that calm evening, amidst the sweet scent of machine oil, surrounded by springs, levers, and steel parts, these quiet working moments were the first whispers of the modern world. And those whispers still secretly blend into our daily lives today. From the outside, it looked like something between an ordinary printing press and a piano. But what Christopher was shaping in his hands was the first version of a tool that billions of people would use in their daily lives. On that quiet winter night, as people slept in Milwaukee's snowy streets, they had no idea that the metallic sounds emerging that night would still echo in the rhythm of billions of fingers 150 years later. Tonight, I'll tell you the story of QWERTY. This isn't just the story of a keyboard layout. This is the story of how a mistake lived alongside billions of people for 150 years. How a design served the exact opposite of its purpose. The calm and contemplative story of how patience and habit triumphed over logic. In the summer of 1868, Christopher Latham Sholes was 50 years old. This quiet man living in Milwaukee was a journalist, politician, and inventor. But his true passion lay hidden in the peaceful hours he spent in his workshop. In those years, America had not yet experienced the rapid changes of World War I. People lived in a slower, more thoughtful time. They could afford to give themselves more time. Christopher's workshop was in a small building in downtown Milwaukee. Metal parts sparkled in the sunlight, filtering through the windows. His shelves held various tools, screws, and springs. Most importantly, there were Christopher's patient hands. He had been working on a writing machine for years. In that era, writing was a very difficult task. People wrote letters by hand and ordered important documents from calligraphers. Printing presses existed for book publishing, but they weren't practical for short texts. Christopher's dream was simple but revolutionary. A machine that could immediately print the texts people wrote. This would make their work even easier. The first prototypes were extremely simple. Metal letters arranged in alphabetical order would press onto paper. Keys arranged in A, B, C, D, F, G order seemed logical. Christopher began working with this arrangement. In the first tests, everything went smoothly. In the autumn of 1868, Christopher noticed a problem. When his machine operated very slowly, there was no issue. But when users tried to type quickly, the metal bars would collide with each other, jam, and the machine would stop. The problem was this: in English, certain letters appeared together very frequently. Letter combinations like TH, ER, IN, ON. In alphabetical arrangement, these letters were very close to each other. When typing quickly, the second metal bar would start moving before the first one had returned to its position. The result? That annoying sound of metal clashing against metal and the typewriter's stubborn pausing. Christopher struggled to solve this problem for months. First, he tried springs that would move the metal bars faster. Then he adjusted the distance between the bars. But nothing worked. The problem wasn't with the machine's speed, but with its arrangement. During those quiet autumn days, Christopher developed a revolutionary idea. Since fast typing is causing the problem, he thought, then I should slow down the typing speed. This idea made sense for that time. Christopher's goal was to make a working machine. Speed was secondary. What mattered was that his machine worked without jamming. With this purpose, he decided to separate frequently used letters from each other. In 1870, Christopher and his business partners, Carlos Glidden and Samuel Sowell, developed a new keyboard layout. This layout deliberately distributed frequently used letters to different regions. The name QWERTY came from the first 6 letters in the top left corner of the keyboard. These letters had been chosen randomly. The real purpose was to keep English's most frequently used letters away from each other. For example, the most frequently used letter in English, E, was placed on the right hand, while the second most frequent, T, was placed on the left hand. R and S were positioned on different hands, N and I in different regions. Christopher's work took months. He tested every letter combination, calculated usage frequency. During those winter days, in his workshop's atmosphere scented with oil and soot, Christopher patiently positioned letters, unknowingly writing destiny into the fingerprints of future generations. In 1874, the Remington Company purchased this design. Remington No. 1 typewriters were released to market with the QWERTY layout. The machine was expensive, but it worked. The metal bars no longer jammed. In the 1880s, typewriter use became widespread. Companies, government offices, and newspapers began using these machines. And of course, trained personnel were needed to operate these machines. Typing schools opened in America. These schools taught the QWERTY layout because all machines on the market used this layout. Young women attended these schools, learned QWERTY, and entered working life. During this period, typing became a profession. Typists worked in offices, writing letters, reports, and contracts. And they had all learned the QWERTY layout. By the 1890s, QWERTY had become a standard. New typewriter manufacturers also used this layout because the trained workforce knew this layout. Selling a machine that used a different layout would be very challenging. In this period, typing speed wasn't important. Writing even a few pages a day was a great achievement. QWERTY's slowing purpose didn't pose a problem. The machine worked without jamming, and that was enough. In the 1930s, an educator named August Dvorak made a revolutionary discovery. Dvorak spent 10 years studying typing speeds, letter frequencies, and finger movements. And he reached a surprising conclusion. The QWERTY layout was terribly inefficient. According to Dvorak's research, when using QWERTY, our fingers traveled 16 miles of distance per day. However, with a smarter layout, this distance could be reduced to 1 mile. Only 32% of words written in QWERTY could be typed on the home row, the natural position of fingers. Dvorak developed his own layout. In this layout, the most frequently used letters were on the home row, distributed balancedly between right and left hands. Vowels were placed on the left hand, the most frequently used consonants on the right hand. The test results were astonishing. Typists who learned the Dvorak layout were like fingers freed from their chains. They typed 20 to 40% faster, made fewer errors, and thus became less tired. The Dvorak layout was scientifically far superior to QWERTY. But by the 1930s, millions of people had learned QWERTY schools courses, and employers expected QWERTY. Dvorak's perfect layout couldn't be used in practice. When personal computers became widespread in the 1980s, a great opportunity arose. There were no more metal bars. The jamming problem had completely disappeared. The reason for QWERTY's creation was now obsolete. Computer manufacturers could have tried different keyboard layouts. Software developers could have suggested more efficient layouts, but they didn't. All computers came with QWERTY. Why? Because people knew QWERTY. Office workers, students, home users. Everyone was accustomed to QWERTY. Selling a computer that used a different layout would be commercial suicide. When the internet became widespread in the 1990s, the situation became even more entrenched. People were now writing not just for work, but also for entertainment. Email, chat, forums QWERTY was used everywhere. Software developers supported alternative layouts. Windows had a Dvorak layout option. But 99% of users stayed with QWERTY because change was too troublesome and the benefit was uncertain. When the iPhone was released in 2007, another great opportunity arose. Touchscreens had eliminated physical constraints. Apple could use any layout it wanted. Users were going to learn something new anyway. But what did Apple do? It brought QWERTY to the screen. Even Steve Jobs didn't want to change this 150-year-old layout because people's habits were too strong. They wouldn't want to give this up. In the following years, Android, Windows Phone, and all smartphones used QWERTY. Even on touchscreens, we were using the layout designed in 1868. The ironic part of this situation was this. We were writing a lot on mobile devices. WhatsApp, Instagram, Twitter, email. We were writing thousands of words per day. But we were still using a layout designed in 1868 to slow down our speed on the fastest devices in our pockets. Some alternative keyboard applications emerged. Applications like Swipe and SwiftKey offered different typing methods. But the layout was still QWERTY because users didn't know anything else. Today, QWERTY alternatives still exist. Scientifically designed layouts like Dvorak, Kolnak, and Workman are available. These layouts enable faster typing, less fatigue, and fewer errors. There are special layouts for programmers. Characters frequently used in coding have been made more accessible. There are layouts optimized for different languages. Each one is more efficient than QWERTY. But the statistics are very clear. More than 99% of the human population uses QWERTY. This habit, continuing for 150 years, is so strong that even scientific evidence cannot change it. Modern research shows the harm of QWERTY: repetitive stress injuries, carpal tunnel syndrome, finger fatigue. Most of these could be prevented with a better layout. But nobody wants to change. Ergonomic keyboard manufacturers offer different layouts. Split keyboards, angled keyboards, different arrangements. But almost all of them use the QWERTY layout because that's what the market demands. Voice recognition technology is developing. Perhaps in the future, we'll write very little and mostly speak. But today, we still write a lot and use QWERTY. Artificial intelligence and auto-completion might reduce the amount of writing. But keyboard layout still maintains its importance because it lies at the foundation of human-computer interaction. New generation children learn QWERTY when they're born. At school, at home, everywhere they encounter this layout. Thus, the 150-year-old mistake is also passed on to the next generation. VR and AR. Technologies offer new interaction methods. Virtual keyboards, gesture controls, eye tracking. But these also mostly mimic the QWERTY layout. Maybe in the future, the act of writing will almost cease to exist. We'll share our thoughts directly from our brains. But until that day, everything starts with a Q key. Then the QWERTY problem will solve itself. QWERTY's story teaches us many things. Sometimes the best technical solution doesn't win. Sometimes habits are stronger than logic. Sometimes a mistake becomes so widespread that it becomes a standard. When Christopher Sholes died in 1890, he couldn't see how his invention would affect the world. He couldn't imagine that QWERTY would still be used 150 years later. He couldn't know that, contrary to his own purpose, it would become part of the daily lives of billions of people. This story shows one of technology's paradoxes. Sometimes poor designs live very long. Sometimes temporary solutions become permanent. Sometimes wrong beginnings turn into right results. When you touch your QWERTY keyboard today, remember Christopher's workshop in Milwaukee. Think about how a layout designed in 1868 to prevent metal bars from jamming lives on your touchscreens in 2025. Now close your eyes and imagine that quiet Milwaukee workshop. The metal parts that a man working by candlelight patiently shaped. Think about how those parts live on under billions of fingertips. Christopher's decisions made 150 years ago blend into the rhythm of every word you write today.